it's good. We've started this new series called, who can remember? Resilient, bounce back people, resilient. And Pastor Ant had an amazing sermon last week, and he really dug into this aspect of being resilient and being a person that can bounce back. One of the things he talked about was perseverance, and how if we persevere, we mature. But not many of us persevere, hey? Not many of us stick things out. We jump around from this thing to the next thing, and we don't always mature, and so that's always a key thing. And so that was a great sermon, and really such an amazing thing. And today's topic is all about, excuse me, the overcoming spirit. But I have labeled it to all the martyrs. Now, I know some of you are sitting there and you're thinking, that's not me. It's time for me to leave the building. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand a little bit more of what God has called us to. And that's why I say this morning, I really feel is going to be a breakthrough moment for a lot of us. And so we've called to be overcomers. We've called to overcome and ultimately to be martyrs. But we'll get there. Don't stress too much. So we've just started Life Academy now. And as I was setting out the curriculum for 2 years, I had this super bright idea that we should study the book of Revelations. Because I was like, that's such a tough one. No one knows what's going to happen in the end. And anyway, we should probably study it as a church. So I was like, okay, I'll put it down. Anyway, so it got to this term. And I suddenly looked through the courses, and I'm like, the book of Revelations is now this term. So I sat down with my team, and I was like, hi, guys, anybody want to speak and do the lectures on Revelations? Everyone's just like, you will do it. I'm like, me, why was I so clever to put this book of Revelations in? Because it is such a tough book. It's a little bit of a crazy book. It's really difficult. And so I've been tasked now to teach this. And you start reading the book of Revelations, and you know that it's written by John, who was the disciple, one of the disciples of Jesus, one of his close three. I actually love the story of John because it's very intimate. John and Jesus was super, super intimate. When you first introduced to John, he's labeled one of the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder. And he's pretty much like that. He's got like this hardcore thing about himself. Like he's quite prone to anger. And there's one point where something's happening with a bunch of people, and he's like to Jesus, let's just call fire down on them. He's like that kind of guy. He's like, let's just wipe them out. And there's this guy that's a little bit crazy like this, and Jesus is like, whoa, okay. But after 3 years of spending time with Jesus, he suddenly starts to transform into somebody who later writes 5 books in the Bible, in the New Testament, which is obviously the Gospel of John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelations. And most of those books have got to do with truth and love. And so here's John, this crazy, let's wipe people out kind of guy, spending this intimate time with Jesus. And now it's like all he can speak about is truth and love. Why? Because he's been with the one that said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's infiltrated his life. He's been with the one that says, I am love. So John, even in 1 John, that whole book is about love. It's a beautiful book. Talks about love. And so John transforms into this person. Even when he writes the Gospel of John, when he writes about Jesus' life, he keeps talking about someone in there called the person that Jesus loves, the one that Jesus loved. And that was actually himself, if you look in other Gospels. So he's not doing it like me, who Jesus loved. He just keeps talking about this guy in his Gospel. And if you read the other Gospels, you realize this is John. And there was such an intimacy between Jesus and John. And then he gets to write this book of Revelation, where he's gone through these crazy trials. The church is under persecution. People are just dying for Christ. And he gets caught, gets taken to this island. Horrific things happen there. And one day he's sitting in God's presence, and he gets this vision. And Jesus, it actually says the author of the book of Revelations is actually Jesus. It's not John. John was just the one that was writing it down, everything that Jesus was telling him. And so he gets this privilege to see the end times, what's going to happen in the end. And we get the confusion of reading that book and going, what the heck was that guy seeing? But it's beautiful. And when you read Revelations, you realize there's a lot going on that we don't see. Okay? There's a lot of things happening around us that we are not seeing. Even the stuff with Israel, there's a lot of things have been foretold about the end times that have got to do with so clearly with Israel. And so we look and we see these wars and we're freaking out and whatever, but it's interesting. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Have you ever felt that way? That's been my last 5 years. There's a lot that has happened in my life, a lot of trauma in the last 5 years. But when I look back, I go, oh, okay. But when you're in it, you're just like, what the heck is going on? Anybody ever felt that way? You're like, I don't get this. Like, I'm following Jesus. I'm a pastor, for goodness sakes. You know, we think that everything's going to be sweet and rosy. And meanwhile, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of challenges. And a lot of our challenges and difficulties actually come because there's a lot happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of spiritual stuff happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of things that you got no idea about that Jesus is putting into place, working out, figuring out. And that's really what being an overcomer is about. So Revelations uses this word 17 times. 17 times. It's one of the main words used in Revelation. You'll be an overcomer. Those that can hear, you will overcome. And it keeps on repeating throughout this book. And, you know, as I was digging into this book, I got to the point where I was kind of understanding the beginning, and then I started losing the plot when there was dragons and things happening. But I hit this verse, which we all know quite, or most of us will know, Revelations 12:10-11. And it says this, "Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, 'Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters who accused them before our God day and night have been cast down, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of the testimony, and they did not love their lives to death.'" So the question, how do we become resilient? Point number one. Are you ready for it? Number one, be consistent. Be consistent. I love this. I love that community vibes, eh? Community. Why do we always talk about cell groups? It's community. It's people coming together, being like, come on, we're all in battles, but you know what? We're going to do it together. We're going to walk this. So they overcame him. I always used to actually read, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb. Hey? That was always in my head. And when I read this, they overcame him. Who is him? Reverse a little bit and check out there, the accuser of our brothers and sisters. So there's someone accusing us. Guess who it is? I'll give you one guess. His name begins with S or D or any. There's this dodgy one out there, you know, the devil. And some people are like, I don't know if there's really a devil. Listen, there's evil in the world, and there has to be someone that's organizing this evil situations. There is an accuser out there. And this is an interesting thing because accusations will always come to us as Christians. The devil actually says there is before God accusing us of what we've done. He's sitting there. Tammy did this today. Tammy did that. Tammy did this. And then she did that. And then she did that. And oh my goodness, then she did that. And he's accusing. How many times do you get those accusations in your head? Hey? Accusations about things that have happened in the past that you can't let go of. You want to do something for God and you're like, flip, but I did this. You want to step out and take on a new project that you feel maybe God is wanting you to step into, a new job, and you think, oh, but I messed up last time. You want to become a leader in church and you're like, oh, but there's this stuff that I'm struggling with, and yesterday I even messed up on it. And these accusations roll in and out, hey? These accusations are forever coming against us. So what is the key? How do we get out of that? How do we deal with the accusations, the battle of accusations? It says there, they overcame him by The blood of the Lamb. That is the key, the blood of the Lamb. It's not our good works, by the way. It's not our good works that wins the battle against accusations, because that's what we try and do, hey? We're like, flip, I messed up yesterday, so today when I come to church, I need to lift my hands higher than anyone else. I need to do something. I need to get back into church. I need to start reading the Word again. I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. And what's happening? The accusations keep coming. And you're like, what is going on here? They keep coming. You see, it's the blood that sets us free from the accusations. That is what sets us free. My sin is great. Yes? Every one of us. If you could write down everything I've been thinking, even within this day, you'll probably be quite shocked. That's the reality of all of our lives. Like, sin is there. So the accusations are there. But the blood of Jesus is there. So imagine the situation. You're in a courtroom. You've just been accused of 10 million things that you've done today. And here's the accuser before the judge, who's God. And the accuser, the devil, and he's like, Tammy did this. She needs to die for this and needs to die for that. And And then suddenly, picture the scene. Jesus busting forth the back doors. You know, like those movie moments. Like, and here comes Jesus walking in and he says, don't worry. Tammy, I got you. I'll die for you. That's fine. I'll take all of the punishment you should get right now. I'll take it for you. And the judge says, okay, Jesus, you take it for Tammy. And the accuser, funny enough, he carries on accusing, hey? Carries on accusing, but then we nonners are like, Jesus, listen, I think my sin is a bit too much. So I'm going to really actually rather believe what the accuser's saying. Jesus, I hear you. I hear that your blood covers me and all of that. But no, this is getting me. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to take the punishment myself. That's literally what we do when we don't accept Jesus' blood over. And when we keep listening to the accuser over and over and over, it keeps on going. See, the thing is this. When Jesus comes in and he says, you know what, Tammy? I'm the one that's going to die for your sin. And I ask him why. And he says, because I love you. I love you. You are my child. I'll do anything for you. The bath. Anything for you. Like anything. I will do anything for you. That love relationship is there. That's the intimacy. You see, we don't overcome accusations by good works. We overcome it by our identity, who we are. And so when the accusations are thrown at us, we try to throw good works back, but it doesn't break that because the accusations keep coming, because that's not what kills the accusations. What kills accusations is, I'm a child of God. I have been saved. I may have messed up yesterday, but today I'm going to step into something new. By the way, I'm not all for the thing of just carry on sinning because God's going to forgive you. I'm not on that vibe, so we're not going there. But the fact of, you know what, every time I feel like, man, I messed up and I can't do it, God is saying, you're my child. Of course you can do it. Of course you can do it. That identity we got to live with. And so if you want to be consistent in your perseverance and you want to be resilient, you want to be an overcomer, what do you got to do? You got to step into your identity. And stepping into your identity every single day will bring consistency. Does that make sense? See, too many of us don't step into our identity. We step into the good works first, and it doesn't bring consistency. We keep messing up. We keep living with guilt. We keep living with shame. How many of you are sitting here right now and you feel extremely guilty or shameful for something that you've done, and it's pulled you back from your Christian walk with God? And here God is saying, I want you to do this and I want you to do this. I've got a beautiful plan for you. I've got a destiny for you. And you're going, but I did that. Jesus is like, it's fine. I've got you covered. Tell the person next to you, I've got you covered. Well, no. Jesus has got you covered. That could get super awkward. Jesus has got you covered. And so when we fight accusation, we fight it with our identity, not with good works. Does that make sense? Now, just a quick one. Okay, prepare yourselves. Are you all prepared for this? Be careful not to become part of the accuser's team. Dum, dum, dum. So this is the hard one. Now, this is me talking to myself as well. We're having conversations here. The thing is this. When we don't forgive, what are we doing? We're accusing the person of what they've done to us. We're accusing them. And I know my head goes, but I've got a right to accuse them because they hurt me. But we don't have a right to accuse them because even the devil has a right to accuse us, right? He has got that right because we've done bad things, but Jesus still loves us enough to forgive us. Same thing with us, with people around us. When we don't forgive, we're stepping into the devil's camp and accusing other people. And yet we're supposed to be a child of God and be able to say, you know what? I know this person has hurt me, but I'm a child of God, and my dad forgave me, so he should be able to give me the power to forgive them. But we struggle with this. Hey, this is such a difficult thing, but we need to make sure whose team we're on. Hey? I wonder, John, jumping back to John at the cross. He's sitting there at the cross or kneeling at the cross. Jesus is up there. Jesus is dripping with blood. The blood is dripping down. I wonder if John in that moment would have been thinking, I wonder where the other disciples are. Where's these other guys? I wonder if he was sitting there thinking, flip, I know other people are going to accuse me now because at that time, if you were put on a cross, if anybody was with you, you would be accused as well. I wonder if he was feeling those accusations. I don't think he was. Because all it says is that John was kneeling at the cross, looking at Jesus, looking at the blood of Jesus dripping down. And Jesus says to John, John, here is my mother. Take care of her. Mother, here is John. He'll take care of you. And in that moment, John was given a mandate from Jesus. Like Jesus' mother, like we all love our mothers, hey? Hey, even if our mothers are dodgy, we still love them, hey? Like we love our mothers. But I don't think Jesus' mother was dodgy, but anyway, like, sorry, Mary. But John, like, think about it. He is there, like, just having this experience of seeing Jesus dying and then getting this mandate out of seeing the blood and then stepping into that. And he becomes one of, obviously, the disciples that really helped the early church, which was the bride of Christ. Another, can't say thing, but another entity that Jesus loves so much, the church. And so when John was in that place where accusations could have surrounded him, he wasn't focused on the accusations, was he? He was focused on the blood of Christ. And as he focused on the blood of Christ, what did he get? He got a mandate. He got a calling. And that's the same for us. And that's when we become consistent because we focus on the blood. Yes? Does it make sense? Okay, point number 2. To become resilient, we need to confess the truth. Okay, confess the truth. So along with accusations comes deception. So the devil is very much on a mission to drive out truth from this world, hey? That's what he wants to drive out of schools. He wants to drive it out of families, out of cultures. He wants to drive it even out of the church. And deception is pretty much based on lies. And the question is, what lies do you have in your head right now that you are believing? What is happening in your head when it comes to lies? There's so many different lies you can imagine because deception is everywhere. When we look at social media, we're believing things that's not the truth. And it says here the key is they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, dealt with that, the word of their testimony. The word of their testimony. That's how they overcame, with the word of their testimony. The word, that word that in the original Greek comes from the word logos, which comes from the word, which talked about in the Bible as Jesus. And I've got to ask ourselves the question, how do you know deception if you don't know the truth? Hey? How do you know if something is wrong when you don't know what's right? But yet majority of us, if you look at our week this week, we spend more time on the things that could have deceived us than in the word that gives us truth. Yes? We spend plenty of time, social media series, all sorts of things, magazines, whatever you get involved in, whatever we get ourselves into, and there's deceptions in there, but we don't spend our time in the truth. And so the word is so important. But secondly, their testimony. They overcame with the word of their testimony. Now, this little word testimony comes from the Greek word martyria, which actually means being a witness in the court of law. So someone who has a direct and personal experience of events in which took part. Zola, do you want to come and preach here, fellow lawyer? So your testimony is something, it's as strong as being in a court of law. Can you imagine? And saying, actually, no, this is what I saw. That's what your testimony is. So your testimony, it's not just words. It's not just these nice little words declaring and saying, Jesus did this in my life. You're actually declaring to not only the seen, but the unseen around us, what God has done in your life. That's what a testimony does. Unfortunately, Facebook and all these things, they're really testimonies about ourselves most of the time, hey? Hey, this is what I did this weekend. This is we have these amazing testimonies about ourselves, but we got to ask the question, how many of us are testifying about what Jesus has done? I did this race yesterday, and it was a massive testimony, because in February, I had quite an intense back surgery, which if I hadn't of, probably in that week, I would have lost control of my bowels and my bladder for the rest of my life. I would have been wearing a nappy and having like a bag. Can you imagine that? And so they took me straight into surgery the next day. And I was on bed rest. For 6 weeks, I was in bed rest. And I was so scared to get out of that bed. Irene and Nomps were probably the two people that were like, come, let's go for a walk. I was scared. Because I was like, if I do anything again, what happens if my back, that happens again? And I was scared. And anyway, long story short, 8 months later, yesterday I did a trail run, which was quite long, and I'm still standing. Yes, which is amazing. But the testimony of it is I can go into Facebook and be like, yeah, this is what I did, you know, which is what we feel like, because we're like, yeah, I actually did it. Like, I feel very proud of myself, actually, very proud. But I decided I would go into Facebook, write a testimony about what God has done. And imagine if Facebook was flooded with testimonies about what God has done. Hey, imagine that. But we testify about all sorts of other things that are going on. But it's so important. And you've got to ask the question, why are we so shy? See, this word martyrio that comes from the word testimony actually comes from the word martyr. Now I'm getting to the real juicy stuff. My fellow martyrs, we are to share our testimonies because we know if we do, we'll be persecuted in some way. Either people will look at you and be like, this person's crazy. Or you'll actually be ostracized. Or people will start a massive argument with you, especially over Facebook. There'll be all sorts of comments. And so what do? We become silent. We become silent. So when we're accused, right, we stop. When we're deceived, we become silent. And that's what we need to be so careful of. And too many of us are becoming silent. And so the kingdom of darkness is growing and the kingdom of light is diminishing. Because the truth isn't out there because we are silent. Or we've just stopped altogether because we're so stuck in our accusations. Does it make sense? So we need to step up. To be resilient, we need to be able to confess the truth. Okay? We need to be consistent and confess the truth. Last one. You all still with me? Last one. Okay, this is a bit of a heavy one. Prepare yourself. So, to be resilient, we need to be courageous. Okay? So there's accusations, right? There's deception, but there's also violence. Okay, now we're getting a bit rough here. Violence, there's violence. There's violence. I've experienced violence over the last 5 years that I don't think I've experienced my whole life. Violence. And violence brings trauma. From personal experience, I know what trauma does. Trauma makes you shrink back. Accusations make you stop. Deceptions make you silent. Violence or trauma makes you shrink back. And many of us have shrunk back. Many of us, God has called us to something, but we've stopped, we're silent, or we've completely just shrunk back. And the key here goes on to say, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives unto death. Sharing your testimony is going to cause some persecution. You stepping into the things God has called you to is going to also there's going to be persecution. I've been out in Philippi, and you know how crazy it has been out there, and I've been held up and hijacked and da-da-da. And many, many times I wanted to stop, I wanted to be silent, and I wanted to shrink back. Many times I was like, I'm coming back to Sea Point. I'm out of here in my head. And every time when I asked God, what do you want me to do? Never was a call of shrinking back. There was never that call. And so we need to be careful that trauma in our lives don't cause us to shrink back, to sit down, to just do the mundane, the normal, the safe things. Because trauma does that to you. You want to find a place of safety, which isn't a bad thing, not at all. But sometimes that causes us to totally shrink back and never to step out again. And God calls us to continually step out. Find healing. Yes, I'm all for that. I see a therapist. Yes, I do all that stuff to deal with my trauma. But I don't shrink back. I don't shrink back. Even though sometimes I really want to, but I don't. And so being a martyr is actually living a daily life of not loving your life more than you love Jesus. That's what being a martyr is. That's why I call this to all my martyrs. Because the question is, do you love your life more than you love Jesus? Big question, hey? That's a big question. But if you're in this love relationship with Jesus, which I feel for myself I am, there is a point where I'm highly scared for my own life, but there's a point where I'm also like, I'm willing to give it up for what Jesus has called me to. Because we're all going to die. Do you know that? Do you guys know that? Just in case you didn't know that, this is your revelation this morning. You are going to die. I'm all about dying for something that's worth it. I don't want to die in comfort. I don't want to die in comfort. I don't want to get to heaven and Jesus is, well done, my good and faithful servant. I actually had these things planned for you, but you were comfortable. But you get in. You got in. I don't want to just get in. When you read Revelations, you hear about these people like that are around the throne. You hear about all these martyrs and that, and I'm like, there's no ways I'll be in that crowd. Like, but you think to yourself, oh wow, that's such an honor. But I'm not saying now walk out the door and go into a dangerous situation and go get killed for Jesus. I'm not going there, guys. All I'm saying is, let's start testifying. Amen? Let's start just talking about the truth to start off with. Let's start working through our trauma so we don't shrink back all the time whenever we're triggered, but we're actually stepping up and saying, God, use me for what you call me. Let's not stop. Hey? These are our decisions this morning. You've got decisions. We've all got decisions. Hey, when the accusations come, are you going to stop? Or are you going to be consistent? When the deception comes, are you going to be silent or are you going to confess the truth? And when violence or attacks comes, are you going to shrink back or are you going to be courageous? Let's close our eyes. So where are you this morning? I think this pulls us all into a place of God, where am I right now? And that's my question to you right now. Where are you? Do you want to continue being where you are because you've stopped? Continue just being silent? Continue just shrinking back? Or is this a moment today where you say, I'm actually going to start stepping up. I'm going to be consistent in what God's called me to. I'm going to start confessing the truth, and I'm going to be courageous when the attacks come. Where are you?